A little bit about the Kidney Foundation of Ohio. The foundation provides a broad-based program of direct assistance to those with kidney disease and provides educational programming for the general public, renal professionals, and patients and their families. We serve a 32-county area in northern and eastern Ohio, and we support 2 affiliate chapters in Lake and Summit counties. We remain the only health and human service agency in Northeast Ohio, which continues to provide direct dollars to patients to assist them through the devastation of their kidney disease. The foundation remains an Ohio-based organization, and all funds that are raised here in Ohio stay here in Ohio to help our patients. With that being said, I would like to turn it over to Kathleen Perino to tell us a little bit about Kathleen?
Thanks, Molly. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kathleen Perino. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for University Hospitals Transplant Institute, and wanted to thank Molly and the Kidney Foundation for having us be a part of this webinar. We really enjoy the collaboration. Wanted to point out one important thing for the month of April. We are celebrating National Donate Life Month, and the purpose of this entire month is to raise awareness about organ, eye, and tissue donation, to encourage registration, and really to honor those that have saved lives through the gift of donation. This part is critical to the patients that we serve and really what we do every day. So this is an important month for all of us. Wanted to also introduce our speaker today, Dr. Sarabu. He is a transplant nephrologist. He's the medical director of our Living Kidney Donation program, and just an integral part of our program as well. So without further ado, because I know he's got lots of important information for us, wanted to turn the program over to Dr. Sarabu. And thank you, Dr. Sarabu, for all your hard work on this.
Thank you, Molly and Kathleen. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you all today. And we'll, as Molly mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about what makes a kidney match. Whenever we hear something, got matched to us, I think it kind of creates some sort of excitement, right? We feel like, we're unique and something especially got matched to us, whether we are on the market to look for a new house, or, if somebody is looking for a life partner, and they're in dating sites, if they find, okay, we have a new house for you, or new profile that matches what you're looking for, it kind of creates excitement. So similarly, if somebody's looking for a kidney transplant and they're waiting for a kidney transplant, if they get a call that, okay, we found a kidney match for you, you can imagine it can be very exciting, right? So the next few minutes we'll spend some time understanding what goes into this match process. Most of us are probably providers for patients with advanced kidney disease or dialysis. So understanding that process will likely help us relate to what the patients go through, or direct them or guide them during that process in whatever way we can. I also wanted to take this opportunity to mention a few words about why a kidney transplant. What are the benefits of kidney transplant versus dialysis, and briefly mention about how to get a kidney transplant. I will also spend a couple of minutes spend a couple of minutes by explaining differences between living and deceased donor kidney transplants, what it means from the patient perspective. And we'll spend some time understanding what goes on behind the scenes when somebody gets a call for a kidney match, or if they have a potential living donor, what kind of process goes in there and what options they have. And I will also mention a few tips about how to increase their chance of matching to a kidney. So why a kidney transplant? I'm sure by now most of us know kidney transplant offers better quality and quantity of life as compared to staying dialysis. So how much benefit compared to dialysis in terms of survival? This is a graph that was published almost 25 years ago now, where the researchers compared relative risk of death, compared the risk of death for patients who get transplant relative to those who stay on dialysis. So relative risk of death is on y-axis. The higher this number, that means the patients who get transplant have worse survival. The lower it is, the patients who get transplant have better survival. And it's a ratio. So on x-axis, it's time from transplantation in days. So at the time of transplant, right off the bat, as we can see, the patients who get transplant have a little bit of higher risk of dying owing to the risk of the surgery. And at about 3 months, the risk of death becomes equal to the risk of death for patients who are on the waiting list for dialysis. And as time passes, the risk of death gradually decreases for patients who get transplant. This is another way of looking at the same concept or same observation. So on the y-axis, we have annual adjusted death rates per 1,000 patients. And the gray bar is those who are on the wait list, and the black bar is those is for those who get transplant. So as you can see, the death rates on patients who are still waiting on the wait list for kidney transplant is about 3 times higher than those who get transplant. And these are across different years, or the about 25 years ago, and the pattern still remains the same. Just to give us all, excuse me, an idea how many patients are actually waiting in the United States for kidney transplant across the last decade or so. So there's about 140, 150,000 patients who are actually waiting for a kidney transplant. And this is per year. How many transplants get done in the United States? The purple line is for transplant from deceased donor, and the green line is from living donor. So across the last decade or so, every year, there have been about 5,000 kidney transplants that have been done from living donors, and the deceased donor numbers have gradually increased over the decade. And in 2021, there were about 20,000 deceased donor kidney transplants that were done. Is there any difference in terms of how long the kidney lasts, whether it is from a living donor or a deceased donor? Yes, there is. As we can see in this graph, on the y-axis, we have 5-year graft survival in percentage. And on x-axis, across different years from 2000 to 2015. So this red line indicates 5-year graft survival for patients who received kidney transplant from deceased donors, and this green indicates living donor. As we can see, at any given year, there have been significant differences between how long the kidneys from living donor last compared to deceased donor, and living donor transplant on average perform much better. So with that brief understanding of the benefit of kidney transplant, and also with the understanding that living donor kidney transplants fare better, let's look at how can one get a kidney transplant. And if most of us are providers, we probably already know this. However, for the benefit of patients with general understanding, I thought I'll just mention some of the terms involved in the kidney transplantation. So one cannot go to a grocery store and buy a kidney. It would have been very easy, and there wouldn't have been so many patients waiting for kidney transplant if it was that easy. And unlike dating sites or unregulated operations for anything else in our life, kidney transplant operations are overseen and strictly regulated by the federal government. And there are a couple of organizations or terminology that comes up whenever we talk about kidney transplantation. One is called OPTN, or Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network. What it means is it's a network of all the transplant centers, organ procurement centers, and all other organizations that are interested or involved in transplantation. And the next organization is UNOS, or United Network for Organ Sharing. It's a private, not-for-profit organization that actually administers the OPTN under contract by federal government. So all the policies, every aspect of kidney transplantation is governed by OPTN, and UNOS administers that. UNOS is the manager, and OPTN is actually the providers or the professionals that are involved in conducting the business of transplantation. So for those who have advanced kidney disease or on dialysis, they need to actually sign up to get a kidney transplant, and the process involves contacting one of the authorized transplant centers to get evaluated, and if and when they're evaluated by providers, including medical professionals, surgeons, social workers, they will be listed for kidney transplant. Okay, so let's for a moment think somebody is evaluated and is listed for a kidney transplant. So what goes on in finding the kidney and why actually we need to match a kidney. So, the idea is that we need to match a kidney so that the kidney will last, as long as the person lives, or, the longest possible way. The primary factors that go into the matching of a kidney or blood type compatibility, and second is histocompatibility. Many of us are probably also familiar with blood type compatibility from our experiences with blood transfusion compatibility. In organ transplant, it's also very similar, except that the positive and negative do not actually play a role in kidney transplantation. So in the rows, we have all the four possible blood types for intended recipient, O, A, B, A, B. And in the columns, we have donor blood types, and if yes indicates that's compatible. So as we all probably know, O blood group is universal donor, so they can donate to recipient with any blood type. Donors with A can donate to either recipient with A or AB, B with B or AB, and AB can donate to only AB. And then the second compatibility we look at is called histocompatibility. This involves something called HLA complex, or major histocompatibility complex, and a little bit of immunology is involved here. Whenever I talk about immunology to patients, they get confused, and I find sometimes it's difficult to explain what antigen and antibody or so if some of you are worried about the difficulty of understanding HLA or histocompatibility, I will try to make it a little bit simple, and just sit back and try to take it easy and understand whatever you can. So HLA complex is are proteins that are actually expressed on cell surfaces, and they are coded by genes that are present on chromosome 6. So we have 6 pairs of alleles. Each pair we inherit from one parent. So we inherit 23 chromosomes from one parent and 23 chromosomes from another parent, if you remember. And on chromosome 6, we have the MHC genes. We have class 1 and class 2. Class 1 has A, B, C. Class 2 has D, P, D, Q, D, R. This is an illustration of the chromosome 6, and the HLA region is on the short arm. Class 1 and class 2, as I mentioned, class 1, A, B, C, and class 2, D, P, D, Q, D, R. So why is it important to look at the HLA system? I talked about the HLA antigens and antibody. The HLA antigens or HLA molecules are very specific to each individual. And the structure or the composition from individual to individual is different in these HLA molecules. So if somebody has an antibody against an HLA antigen from a potential donor, the antibody and the antibodies from this person can attack those cells from the kidney and cause rejection. So we do not want that. So that's why it is very important for us to pay attention to the HLA antibodies whenever we are trying to match recipients with kidneys. So it's sort of on the antibody is kind of a key to a given HLA antigen, and when that key fits into the lock, it creates immune reaction and causes rejection. So how do HLA antibodies form? There are mainly 3 ways. Pregnancy, about 30 to 50% of the time, results in the formation of HLA antibodies. Blood transfusion, up to 50%. And if somebody had a kidney transplant in the past, after the kidneys fail, almost 90% of the time they develop some sort of HLA antibodies. Okay, so with that basic understanding of HLA antibody and antigen, why they are important, let us look at different techniques. Just like when somebody needs a blood transfusion, the blood bank looks for compatibility. When we are evaluating a potential kidney match to a recipient, we do something called cross match as well. And classically, there are 3 types of cross match techniques as indicated in this picture. In the panel on this left side, it's called complement dependent cytotoxicity or CDC cross match, where the serum of the recipient is mixed with donor lymphocytes, complement is added. And if it's a negative, the cells remain intact. If it is positive, the cells die. The second in the middle is called flow cross match, which is what we are doing currently at university hospitals. We used to do CDC cross match, but we have stopped doing that. And here, again, the recipient serum is mixed with donor lymphocytes, and fluorescein labeled antibodies against human IgG are mixed. And the color and intensity is measured through a cytometer. And if there are any antibodies present, it will be positive. If there are no antibodies present, it will be negative. One cool way of doing cross-match is called virtual cross-match, where we actually do not need the donor lymphocytes. Instead, the recipient serum is mixed with commercially available microbeads, they call, and each of these have HLA antigens coded on them. And if the patient has antibodies against some of these HLA antigens, that can be detected through flow cytometer. Okay. That's the cross match and a little bit of immunology that goes into kidney match. And we'll move on to a little bit on kidney match process whenever there's a deceased donor that's identified by an organ procurement organization, how that kidney is allocated to people who are waiting on the wait list. So we talked about UNOS that manages the kidney transplant process. So whenever there's a deceased donor becomes available, a match run is created by UNOS, and it's based on the kidney allocation policy, which determines the algorithm or the rules that go into the match run creation, and potential kidney candidates are identified. The underlying principles in the kidney allocation policy or utility, which means that for organ to be assigned to a person, the idea behind is that they'll choose a person that will benefit the most from the kidney, so that the kidney that's supposed to last for a long time will go into people who actually live for a long time, so that they may not need another kidney transplant in their lifetime. The second principle is justice, to make sure that the kidney allocation is equitable and no segment of our population is disadvantaged. And some of these principles are same for any medical field, for respect for person, autonomy. The patient has the autonomy to accept or turn down transparency. All the activity that goes into kidney transplantation, all the outcomes are transparent and are publicly available. And traceability, there is a very good trail of where the kidney has come from and where it has gone, who has received transplant, etc. On the surface, the kidney allocation policy seems complicated. If we break it down, the factors that go into the kidney allocation policy can be broken down to donor characteristics and recipient characteristics. The donor, when we talk about donor factors, we talk about something called Kidney Donor Profile Index. And it is based on these 10 characteristics of the donor, including age, ethnicity, height, weight, hypertension, whether they had hypertension or diabetes, what was the cause of death, and whether it was donation after circulatory death or not, whether they had hepatitis C, and what their terminal creatinine was. So there's an equation that calculates a number based on all these characteristics, and a percentage is given for KDPI, which can range from 0 to 99%. And interpretation of KDPI is a little bit counterintuitive. The lower the KDPI, the higher the chance of that kidney surviving or functioning in relation to the kidneys that were transplanted. So in this graph, it shows the 3 categories of KDPI that we usually talk about compared to living donor. And these are the estimated graft half-lives. For living donor, if it's about 12 years, KDPI of 0 to 20 is very comparable at 11 years half-life. And as the KDPI goes higher, the estimated half-life of how long the kidney will last is lower. In the kidney allocation, many of the recipient characteristics are also considered. One is estimated post-transplant survival. This is the recipient characteristic where the age of the person, whether they're on dialysis, and how long they have been on dialysis will be considered, whether they have diabetes or not, and whether they had prior transplant. And what it does is it also gives a score of 0 to 99%, similar to the KDPI. And the lower this EPTS score, the higher the person is expected to have a functioning kidney. So in the allocation, the KDPI, the kidneys with KDPI of 0 to 20 are prioritized to patients with EPTS score of 0 to 20. Waiting time is also a consideration, and the waiting time we calculate from the time the patient is registered on the wait list, or if somebody has already started dialysis before registered on the wait list, the waiting time starts from the time they started dialysis. If you remember from the HLA antigens we talked about, A, B, D, R, refer to the HLA antigens, and how many mismatches from the 6 alleles we talked about between the donor and recipient is also considered. And another factor is calculated PRA. PRA stands for panel reactive antibody, and based on the antibody levels that are present in a given recipient, This is calculated by the UNOS system, and in simple terms, it predicts the difficulty for people to get matched to a kidney. So patients with CPRA greater than 98% are considered to have extreme difficulty in getting a match. So going to that justice principle, kidney allocation system accounts for this difficulty and gives priority, and these patients with greater than 90% PRA are given prior to get matched before PRA with lower, before patients with PRA lower. Medically urgent status is also something that's given high priority. These are patients who have exhausted all the dialysis accesses and peritoneal dialysis access. And if somebody was a prior living donor, they also get priority. Distance from the donor hospital was introduced in 2021 in the allocation system. So the kidney allocation system works by awarding points to the recipients based on the criteria I just mentioned. So for qualified time spent waiting on the wait list, the maximum they get is 1 point per year, and per day they get 1/365 points. Degree of sensitization, or the CPRA, we talked about. Patients get points anywhere from 0 to 200. Prior living donor gets 4, and here some points are awarded based on other characteristics. And as I mentioned, in 2021, the distance from the donor hospital was also added to the kidney allocation system, and patients accrue points based on the distance as well. This is a snapshot of an example I took from a deceased donor match run recently that occurred, and each row indicates a bucket. It starts with within 250 nautical miles, and patients with 0 ABDR mismatch and high PRA are given priority, and then prior living donor, medically urgent. So the computer algorithm goes through different buckets and finds a person with highest points within each bucket. So for the donor within our transplant center, these were the different patients who were identified. And here you see the rank where each row is a single patient, and it gives a rank where they rank in matching to that kidney. And as you can see, it is sorted by a number of points they have on the list. Okay, so that was a little bit of an overview of how patients are matched whenever there was a deceased donor kidney available. So let's move on to living kidney donor matching. It is much simpler than the deceased donor matching process, because if somebody has a living donor, not everybody on the wait list is competing for that living donor kidney, and this person has the total control to get that kidney. But the rules of the ABO and HLA compatibility still apply. One thing I really wanted to make everybody understand is that if the blood group or HLA is not compatible between a potential living donor and the recipient, there's something called kidney paired donation. So how does a kidney paired donation or KPD work? It is it's usually employed in a situation where a recipient and a donor pair have incompatibility because of either blood type or HLA incompatibility. And the kidneys between this pair and a different pair are swapped, so that the donor for one person donates to the recipient of a different pair, and the donor from that second recipient donates to the recipient from the first pair. So it's sort of an exchange. Sometimes when I mention this paired exchange to patients, they get worried if the kidney is getting shipped across to a different center, will it work or not? So this is an example of transcontinental, and over 7 or 8 or 9 pairs were involved, and the kidneys were flying all over across the country from California to New York. And all of them worked, and it was kind of an exciting event. So many pairs were involved. This is another example where 60 lives, 30 kidneys were linked because of the paired exchange process. At university hospitals, we partner through a private organization called National Kidney Registry that coordinates the exchange process. There is also a paired exchange process that's facilitated through UNOS. It's called KPD, I believe, and many transplant centers do internal paired exchange as well. This slide, I wanted to show that since NCAR was started in 2008, the number of kidney paired exchanges have increased, and it organizes the most number of paired exchanges in the United States. And to show that paired exchanges work, the graft survival of these paired exchanges are actually similar or lower compared to the traditional living donor or living donor transplants. One last thing I wanted to mention in terms of living donation and matching, something called advanced donation program, where the donor for a given recipient, for any reason, the recipient is not ready to receive a transplant now, but the donor is ready. So the donor can go ahead and donate, and we provide a voucher through the National Kidney Registry or NKR. And whenever the recipient becomes ready to transplant, they can claim that voucher and get a living donor kidney transplant as well. So some of the situations that happens is initially the first advance donation happened in a grandfather. So this grandfather knew that one of their grandchildren has kidney disease, but he did not require a kidney transplant at the moment. A grandfather wanted to give a kidney, and the grandfather was not sure if he would be alive by the time this kid would require a kidney transplant. So this concept of advance donation arose from that need. So he donated a kidney, and his grandson received a voucher. Another situation we encounter is a couple with young children, and they do not want to undergo surgery at the same time. So the donor undergoes surgery first, and the recipient receives a voucher, and whenever they're ready, they would claim that voucher and get a kidney transplant. So a couple of tips of increasing chance of matching is basically to avoid sensitization or developing HLA antibodies for anyone. And to keep in mind that if you have a living donor, do not worry about whether they are matched to you or not. And
Okay, Dr. Sarabu? All right. I think maybe his internet connection froze up a little bit, but in the interim, till we get him back, I think he was just about finishing up anyways. And I would like to, until Dr. Sarabu comes back on, definitely say thank you for an incredibly informative presentation. I know I learned a lot and had a lot of questions answered. We'll take a moment. If the audience has any questions, please put them in the Q&A feature right now. Okay. Okay. All right. So we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A feature right now. Any idea on how many people were involved in the largest chain donation? So that's one of the questions. And also, how do you claim a voucher through the paired donation program? So those are both great questions. Dr. Sarabu is back. Can you hear me, Dr. Sarabu?
yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, it's the internet, it's technology. So,
Okay.
Hey, no worries, no problem. I just read off two really good questions. Do you want me to repeat the questions for you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. The first question was, any idea on how many people were involved in the largest chain donation?
Oh, my friend Melissa, who is one of our living donor kidney Coordinators mentions that it's 70 people. I didn't know that. I thought it was 65, but I trust Melissa. So 70 people were involved. So that was one question, right, Molly? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that was the perfect question. Thank you to Melissa for answering that. So 70 people, that's incredible. Another question that was posed is, how do you claim a voucher through the paired donation program?
Yes, so whenever the recipient is ready, they come to us and we activate that patient in the NKR pool. And whenever there is a kidney that is compatible and available, that person gets a kidney transplant. And it's not transferable. If somebody has a voucher, they cannot transfer it to somebody else if they decide they do not want or they do not need a kidney.
All right, a couple more questions. And this is a good one too. You had mentioned during your talk and had shown slides of paired donation, and that had literally occurred across, and I was looking at the slide, and it said between Los Angeles and New York. Is that a pretty rare occurrence, or is that type of paired donation taking place more often?
It is not a rare occurrence anymore, actually. It's pretty common anywhere in the United States. Kidneys get shipped. And I'm also reading, Molly, through the Q&A. I think somebody asked how common are the paired exchange donations at UH. I think in the last few years, each year we did about 20 to 25 of total living donor kidney transplants. And out of them, I would say about 3 to 5 are paired exchanges.
Okay, that is great. Another attendee had asked if you could speak to the racial disparities in the transplant process and how that's getting addressed.
Yes. So we talked about the justice, which is an underlying principle for kidney allocation system. And over the years, there have been changes to the kidney allocation system to reduce the racial disparity. And unfortunately, racial disparities so evident in all aspects of kidney transplantation and kidney disease. As we know, about 13% of United States population is African Americans, but in end-stage kidney disease, it's about 30%, so 3 times end-stage kidney disease in African Americans. To give a few examples, to reduce the access to kidney transplantation, in 2014, the dialysis time was used rather than the time from registration, seeing that African Americans register a little bit later than starting dialysis. So that reduced some of the disparity. And more recently, there was a change in 2021 on how we estimate the kidney function, or the eGFR. And until 2021, there was a race variable that went into the equation that estimated the kidney function. And it turned out that that old equation estimated the kidney function for Blacks or African Americans a little bit higher than whites. So it was thought that since patients can get listed on a kidney transplant list whenever their GFR is 20 or lower. So with this old equation, it was thought that the African Americans were disadvantaged to be eligible for kidney transplant. That accounted for some of the racial disparity. And that was recognized. And when this new equation without the race went into effect, now hopefully that disparity will diminish as well.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And that question is, with a voucher, how much of an advantage is that to reducing the wait time?
The idea with voucher is that the donor and recipient are not ready to undergo the surgery at the same time. So I guess it depends how many years after the voucher becomes available they will claim, and in the meantime whether they accrue waiting time or not. So if they have accrued considerable waiting time and if they get matched or deceased donor kidney, I guess they would not need to claim the voucher. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that's how I understand the question. I apologize if I didn't.
Okay. All right. So that brings us right to 9:30 on the dot. I didn't see any additional questions in the Q&A feature. So I would like to thank you again, Dr. Sirabu, for a wonderful presentation. Like I said, I know I learned a lot and I hope the audience did as well too. A few quick things, real quick. We as the Kidney Foundation of Ohio have created a 3-part video series that does explain the benefits and the process of trying to get a kidney transplant, either from a deceased or living donor. That's a great resource. The link to that is up in the chat feature, and that is also available on our website and YouTube as well. And for those who are seeking CEU or contact hours, you will again need to complete the evaluation. An email will be sent out later today with a link to that evaluation, and that link will also be available once we end the session today. So please do fill out that evaluation in order to get your contact hours. And with that, thank you again and have a great day. That concludes the session today.
Thank you.
Thank you.